Story 1. We call them dog and pony shows, just another day being told when and where to march when we could be relaxing instead. Story 2. Playing the song Fortunate Son for the soldiers to march to was very appropriate for the five-time squib who avoided any military training during the Vietnam War due to bone spurs. Story 3. In this thread, nobody who participated in the parade today, but everyone is sharing their opinion of what it likely was like anyway. Story 4. Not United States military, but a long-serving one. The absolute majority of military personnel dislike parades, especially if done only to satisfy a senior officer's ego. Story 5. The military is a very diverse group of people with varying beliefs. Some think that having Fox News playing 24 hours a day on base is great, while others find it very annoying. Some are part of the Make America Great Again movement, but the majority are not. Some remain politically neutral, and some have strong opinions, just like the civilian population. I did not march in the parade today. I marched elsewhere. I can tell you that some soldiers were very pleased to be there, some absolutely hated it, and others were just bored and indifferent. People often think of the military as a single, uniform entity. In many ways it is, but politically it really is not. Story 6. Talked to a friend about it yesterday. His unit was spared from attending. Morale was low. Story 7. Done a few army parades. Most of the men there do not want to be there. Few are probably very excited. They likely had to rehearse a few days leading up to it. Then, on the day of the event, they show up at 3 a.m. and stand around until it starts. Once it is over, they are assigned cleanup and rehabilitation of all the equipment. It is a huge waste of time and resources. Story 8. I've been in 7 years across 2 different branches, Air Force to Coast Guard. I've met very few people who are diehard supporters of Donald Trump. Many of us keep politics out of the office, and whenever it comes up in discussion, generally myself included, we are patriotic in the sense that we follow what the Constitution says. We swear an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Also, we all dislike dog and pony shows and parades. I love doing community outreach events, but we never do those in uniform. Story 9. I find it hilarious that a draft dodger gets this parade. Oh, and it is the same person who says that soldiers who get killed or captured are losers and suckers. Story 10. As someone who has done it before, this seemed kind of last minute with the way it was organized and set up. Our basic training graduation day parade is better performed and rehearsed, in my opinion. Story 11. Someone here who knows better than I made a few observations about the whole affair. The Army does seem to have phoned this in, possibly on purpose. No dress uniforms. Soldiers were noticeably out of step. Story 12. God. There are so many presumptuous people who didn't participate making comments. So, I'll tell you my opinion from someone who actually was in the parade, 11th Airborne. Broadcast called us Arctic Angels. Overall, the event wasn't anywhere near as bad or a dog and pony show as anything I've ever done. I've been in for 11 years next week, and this was the most mild thing by far. In summary, not a terrible event, decent mid-level parade, super chill preparation, would do again regardless of who is president. 8 out of 10. Leading up to this, we were asked who wanted to do this versus the usual voluntold. And told we'd basically get a free week of leave in Washington, D.C., leading up to the event. Surprisingly, that wasn't a lie. We got here Monday afternoon and had until Friday afternoon to do whatever we wanted, so long as we didn't get in trouble or come back too drunk. Friday was the only preparation day where we just practiced marching back and forth for an hour and then called it good. The day of wasn't so bad either, but could have been more efficient with time, in my opinion. We all formed up in the middle of the road in a staging area around 1 p.m., which wasn't ideal because it was hot and not all of us brought water bottles. Getting through Secret Service security took entirely too long, but at the same time, I get it. Once through, we sat inside giant air-conditioned tents waiting for 3 hours to start marching. That, again, wasn't bad either. Granted, a lot of people suck at staying in step when marching, but it was loud with the music and people yelling. Honestly, I'm neither a Trump hater nor supporter, but getting to the viewing stand and seeing him salute while having music and people cheering for us and the USA chants kind of makes you feel a type of way. Afterwards, we were all making jokes about, oh, Trump made eye contact with us. Or, Dana White totally saw me, so I'll see you in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Just people being people, having fun how they can. After we got away from the crowds, my whole division started singing our division songs and Blood on the Risers, walking back down C Street towards where we were staying. All in all, I didn't hate this entire event. Was it a waste of money? Probably. Could they have let individual units celebrate the 250th how they wanted instead of a parade? Yeah, but most units still did stuff anyway, so we got both. Would I do this again? Absolutely. I got a free week to play tourist in Washington, D.C., with my soldiers and got to walk in a parade where I genuinely felt supported versus the very disingenuous, "Thank you for your service" we occasionally get. I'd give this entire event a solid 8 out of 10 compared to all the other army bureaucracy I've dealt with in the past 11 years. Edit. Don't come at me with your political opinions, hate, or attacks either. 1. Regulations say I can't talk publicly about it. 2. I genuinely don't care. I've served under President Obama, President Trump, and President Biden, and not once has whoever was in charge affected me or my life, so I've learned how little it matters what I or others think. Story 13. My brother, a West Point graduate from 15 years ago, and my father, a retired United States Army soldier, have been looking forward to the United States Army's 250th birthday celebration for 3 years. I am fairly neutral about the event. However, for them, it is disappointing that the celebration has become so politicized, especially since they dislike former President Donald Trump. Rest assured, there still would have been a cool parade today if Vice President Kamala Harris had won. Now, the event feels tarnished. Story 14. I remember having to do a parade in Seattle. I had a fever of 103. I sweat through my uniform, soaked. A major asked me why I was not smiling. I said I was sick. He ordered me to smile. I said, "Thank me for my service," smiled sarcastically, and immediately went to a frown. What was he going to do? Pull me out of a parade? I spent the rest of the march infuriated that tax dollars were going to waste, that we were wasting our time and energy. I did not join the infantry to march in parades, paint strikers, mop rain, or pick up cigarette butts. I joined because I needed health care for my wife and kids. You could hear the people saying, "Thank you for your service" as we walked past. The glorification of the military machine has nothing to do with freedom. It has everything to do with control. They need poor, disadvantaged people to fill the ranks of the combat arms. They glorify the military to make it an easier pill to swallow. It is disgusting being a tool of the state. I felt dirty and useless the whole time. It was fun training and working with my peers. Have a good day. Thank me for my service. Story 15. My husband did not actually participate in the parade but performed a safety role. He said it was another job for him, but he is glad his job involves keeping everyone safe. He was nervous that people might get hurt. Story 16. As a veterinarian, I can say one thing. They did not have much notice, did not agree with the foolishness, or thought it was all nonsense and would not happen. All you have to do is look at how poor and out of rhythm their marching was. Story 17. What was up with that marching? Was the cadence caller fired for being diversity, equity, and inclusion? Was it a protest? We would have gotten in serious trouble in military school for that kind of sloppiness. It looked like people who wanted to be literally anywhere else, and I am for that. Story 18. Not in the United States military, but I have done my share of demonstration events. First, for the troops just marching, it is not an easy day, perhaps a free weekend to go drinking. The drivers have to get their vehicles back to the train yard. Logistics either have an urgent deadline to return everything or have all the time in the world. So, drinking in their hotel or drinking on the job. They are all intoxicated right now. Story 19. The turnout of the parade was due to the previous administration. They did not hold enough parades, and the people lost interest. It is unfortunate because my parade is the best, maybe even the biggest and definitely the largest. It is a beautiful parade, better than any other country's parade. Kim Jong-un would run in fear at the size of my parade. We are going to rename the Macy's Day Parade to Donald's Day Parade. It is an executive order that I have already signed, so it is law. Some say the name Macy's is fake. Macy's, your fake news ends now. It is time for real news. I am looking forward to my parade this Thanksgiving. Story 20. I was a gunner on a Bradley for some time. Someone from the Department of Defense was coming to see our vehicle line, so our commander had us working in the motor pool with spotlights on after hours, greasing and shining every single barrel while towel washing the armor plates and the interior of all vehicles until they were white glove clean. The visitor never showed up. Our vehicles were clean for 5 minutes before they became dirt and dust-filled again. As for these parades and marches for show, they were not fun. It did not matter who the president was. The entire concept was a waste of time for someone's ego. Story 21. They are not going to answer this question. One thing to keep in mind is that within the United States Army, this was presented and trained as a parade for the 250th birthday of the United States Army. Soldiers are expected to be proud of their service. They are encouraged to see participating in this as a great honor to themselves and to the Army, without it being about President Donald Trump. Additionally, there is a good chance they found participating to be physically tiring. Therefore, you would likely hear a mix of feelings, both proud and tired, overall. Story 22. Been away for a while, but you are often required to do many things when you are in the military. They were probably assigned the task, volunteered, or if there were not enough volunteers, you were voluntold. Ask me anything. Story 23. Veteran, but baffled that the news cycle managed to take the 250th birthday of the United States Army and make it about that loser Trump. We deserved a parade. 250 is a huge anniversary. You do not get a lot of those. And that orange idiot ruined it just by being born. Story 24. Their job is not over. They have to pack up everything and prepare for movement, return to home base, then unpack. Those Abrams and Bradleys are chained to a Department of Defense Exchange Service rail car, which is a complex operation. Smaller vehicles are stowed in a double-decker. Story 25. I worked at the event. It was not military, but production. I noticed 3 distinct types of people involved. Those who were proud and excited to be there, those who were stressed at the center of the difficult situation, and those who were just doing it for the paycheck. Story 26. They are probably afraid to comment. I would be if I had a job that depended on being in Donald Trump's good graces, and I could get doxxed here on Reddit. Story 27. 4 years in the 1st Marine Division here. Anytime we had to boost the ego of a general with a parade for any reason, we were beyond annoyed. Such nonsense. No one I knew liked it. Felt like being a toy soldier. It was not our job, but we were forced to do it. Story 28. It was on a Saturday. There were many practices. They likely will not get back home until Sunday afternoon. The weekend is gone. That is 4 setbacks that have to be embraced. If given the choice, regardless of the event, I would say 90% would choose not to do it in any fashion or form, regardless of the politics. Having spent many hours in preparation and participation in events such as this on a lesser scale than those of today, like any that involve pass and review, I can say they are unpleasant and I would never ask to do them if that was ever a choice one could make. So the answer is they did their duty by carrying out the orders given. Story 29. Trump degraded the military with that spectacle. There are better ways to honor the military and their sacrifices than being made to march for a man who did not get enough love as a child. Story 30. I am retired military, so I did not participate. But I have to say, I have never been more proud of my years of service than yesterday, when more people showed up to any one of the No Kings protests around the country than for his birthday parade. Those people around the country are the ones who really know what it means to be an American, not that small group of people in Washington, D.C. The attendance was so small, it looked like even fewer people showed up to the military parade celebrating 250 years of the United States Army than to the annual air show at Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, where I was stationed in the mid-2000s. That is pretty funny. Tyndall, a then fairly small base in what many consider the least desirable part of Florida, had more people show up to its annual event than this. That is just great. Story 31. Did you have time to practice how to properly march? What I saw today looked like the entire platoon was doing the dead bug and squat thrust exercises. Story 32. Just playing devil's advocate here. I have marched in parades. Even the good ones are not a ton of fun. It is not until the end that the after parade is usually a blast. Story 33. I worked at the parade and talked with several dozen people. I am an assistant director but was not part of the parade. It was cool to be there, but not the 3-mile march because it was hot. Story 34. I've done these kinds of military parades before. It is generally hot, boring, and tiring. That said, it is also kind of rewarding, maybe. Just you and 20,000 of your best friends. Preparation usually involves a lot of marching. 1 or 2 full dress rehearsals are held. Marching in step is much harder than it looks and needs to be practiced. Most units do not do much of it after initial training. Story 35. This question will not get real answers from military personnel. They have to remain apolitical concerning these matters. Of course, there will always be fringe individuals who are eager to leave and believe nothing is good, as well as the opposite extreme who are ultra-enthusiastic. Responses from both extremes should be treated with caution and grounded in reality. Story 36. Veteran here. I am going to say that the lack of discipline during the parade among the soldiers is a very telling indication of how the United States Army as a whole currently feels. There were soldiers out of ranks, there were soldiers out of step, the maintenance on the tanks was lackluster. Coming from someone who was a tracked vehicle mechanic in the United States Army, those squeaks and creaks are extremely telling. No matter how poor the detail, how much we loathed the march we were about to do, one thing soldiers do not do is show a lack of discipline in front of a crowd, let alone on national television. The only reason I can fathom for this is a form of silent protest among the soldiers. They do not seem happy, and they do not appear to be enjoying their role in this. Many of us had leadership before this administration that believed in ideals like President Eisenhower when he stated that to do otherwise is to show weakness, to grandstand and pomp your feathers, to not believe in your own might. Story 37. I saw an advertisement for disabled American veterans yesterday asking for donations, and it made me feel sick. Why don't disabled veterans have everything they need and more provided by our government? Story 38. How does it feel to have a parade for a draft dodger, a lunatic who called out troops losers and suckers? I still cannot believe what I saw yesterday. Story 39. Conversely, to the people who attended a protest against Donald Trump today, how do you feel? You looked impressive in all the videos I have seen so far. Story 40. No one in the history of being in the military likes situations like this. No one gets excited for pass and review. It involves hours of preparation, followed by hours of waiting, followed by a few minutes of walking, and then more hours of work putting everything back, refueling, and doing maintenance. All for absolutely no reason. It does not improve readiness. If anything, it decreases it. It is not training. It is nothing but a colossal waste of time and money. United States Air Force veteran. Story 41. Old Marine here. Thank you for following orders and cooperating with this situation. I hope you get some rest tomorrow. You have a great nation that loves and supports you. Story 42. Displaying our arsenal publicly is not the American way. We used to be more covert. With the former president's chaotic administration in office, military intelligence has become ineffective. We no longer have any secrets left. Story 43. It really diminishes the role of soldiers when an aspiring dictator parades them around like toys or orders them to police the citizens they enlisted to protect. How does that feel? I would like to know. Story 44. Veteran here. My absolute least favorite thing to do in the Army was parades. I would rather do physical training for hours than do parade practice. I would rather sort brass, mop the parking lot, or search for blinker fluid than do a parade. That is mind-numbingly awful, and everyone around me felt the same way. If you got put on parade detail and the rest of your company or battalion was not on it, that meant the first sergeant disliked you and put you on the worst details. Story 45. The marching was absolutely poor. The soldiers looked like they put no preparation into it and did not care to be there. Story 46. Back when I was a cadet, they made us march around in circles on a Saturday morning to honor a general who visited West Point for an Army football game. The United States Army Band played Wind Beneath My Wings. I felt like a clockwork monkey. Story 47. These men and women sacrifice enough for their country, let alone being burdened by an egotistical, self-absorbed individual. Story 48. I wasn't in the parade, but I know a relative of someone who was. This person told me about their accommodations. For 1,000 troops, 2 trailers with 4 showers each, sleeping on fold-out cots lined up in rows, shoulder to shoulder, in an abandoned building. Not joking. I wish I had the pictures. This is how the infantry, hand-selected to represent the army at what was supposedly its 250th anniversary celebration, was treated. Story 49. Not active duty anymore, but I can guarantee that the majority of them were forced to participate in this parade on their day off. They were also probably forced to rehearse during their off time, but the justification is usually, you are never off because being in the military means you work 24/7. You are just off duty. This, of course, only makes people more annoyed. Story 50. They are likely angry but indifferent. I was in the military, and doing foolish things is just one of the many pastimes that all members of the military experience. This is just another foolish task you are told to do. I suppose it is better than sweeping water, which was one of the common time-wasting activities we did often. Story 51. My brother had fun participating in the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps program. They asked for volunteers from any Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps member who is contracted. He enjoyed seeing and interacting with people from different branches. There was a lot of waiting around doing nothing, though. Story 52. I have much less of a problem with the military spending money on a parade that ultimately made us look weak, and much more of a problem with the illegal use of the military to attack peaceful protesters in Los Angeles. Those claiming to be just following illegal orders should be arrested and made an example of. They betrayed our country and should be treated like the traitors they are. Story 53. Forget the parade. How do they feel about being deployed against civilians? I also train for riot duty. Every other row would have live ammunition when Angela Davis was going to trial, while I was a holdover going through basic training at Fort Ord in 1971. My sister-in-law was at Kent State when it happened. Leave these guys alone now. They have a difficult situation with current world events. Nobody in the military supports former President Trump anymore. Story 54. I read that conservatives think it is great to encourage people to join the army. However, as Donald Trump said, there will be no more wars. Why do they need a bigger army? To stop Democrats from protesting? Story 55. Other countries are laughing at us. Just by the United States of America's history of grand spectacle and enthusiasm, it was flat, to say the very least. I am a foreigner living here, and I was overwhelmed with secondhand embarrassment. Story 56. Ex-military, not United States. The marching appeared to be quite poor. It looked more like a parade of prisoners of war being marched past. I am not criticizing the troops because being good at marching does not mean much, but was that deliberate on their part, or does the United States Army not put much effort into drill? With the obvious exception of the old guard and so on. Story 57. My fiancé and I, stationed here in Hickam, went to ours, and it was a very peaceful experience. We obviously did not go in clothes distinguishable as military, as it is against regulations, but we still had a wonderful time. Story 58. At least the people in the parade were housed and fed. Unlike the troops that former President Donald Trump sent to confront protesters in California, who had to sleep in hallways and eat meals ready to eat like homeless people. Story 59. I didn't participate, but actually I know someone who said that they chanted "No Kings" the whole time while marching. Story 60. I am in Australia, and we have our yearly Anzac Day marches where we pay our respects to veterans. However, the United States has a peculiar reverence for the military. Story 61. I hate that every time somebody asks a question to the conservatives or other groups, we do not let them answer for themselves. Story 62. The same as it has been for any parade, formation, change of command, change of responsibility, change of colors, division run, pass and review, retirement ceremony. Come sign up and find out. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.